A waitress's quiet strength. What occurs when a technology billionaire publicly degrades a server, yet she remains composed and responds with complete grace? Had you been seated at the 14th table during that particular evening, nothing out of the ordinary would have caught your attention. You'd likely be enjoying your Merlot, discussing the latest biotechnology company in the downtown area, or checking your mobile device while eating your seared fish. The server with tightly coiled hair secured in a bun, wearing a name badge reading Amani, wouldn't have registered as she took orders at nearby tables, yet that's precisely where everything began. 26-year-old Amani Daniels worked back-to-back shifts at the upscale establishment Barclay and Pine, located on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland's downtown district. She wasn't inexperienced, wasn't boisterous, didn't engage in customer manipulation or use charm to increase gratuities. Her work ethic was unwavering through every shift, punctual, courteous, and unflappable. During that particular Thursday evening, the dining area bustled with activity. Business attire, elegant footwear, and costly timepieces filled the space. The sounds of utensils against china mixed with a soft piano interpretation of Stevie Wonder from the sound system. Amani had just completed writing down a couple's dessert selection when a commanding voice called out from behind her. "Excuse me, hello!" It barked with military-like authority. She pivoted while still clutching her order pad, displaying the weary yet genuine smile that service workers perfect over time. "I'll assist you momentarily, sir," she responded kindly. "Please allow me to—" "I'm indifferent to your other obligations," the gentleman interrupted harshly. 15 minutes have passed. 15! Where can I find your supervisor?" Amani paused. The gentleman at the 9th table appeared to be in his late 40s with styled silver hair and an expensive black suit. His voice carried enough sharpness to slice through glass. A woman sat opposite him, studying her menu as though it contained the world's secrets. "I'll attend to you shortly, sir," Amani repeated, with increased firmness while maintaining her composure. "I appreciate your patience." She then returned to her original customers, completed their order, and proceeded toward the kitchen without hurrying. This small decision, choosing to complete one responsibility before yielding to pressure, would ignite everything that followed. The gentleman at table 9 was Roman Fletcher. Perhaps you've heard the name. A technology mogul worth billions who constructed a smart home empire from Scottsdale, Arizona. The type of individual people pretend not to notice upon entry, though everyone invariably does. Roman wasn't accustomed to waiting, particularly not for a black server. In the kitchen, Amani submitted the order and drew a deep breath. Rude patrons weren't new to her experience. Some had used profanity, others had snapped their fingers for attention. However, something about this man, the way he regarded her as talking furniture, made her skin crawl. Still, she wouldn't risk her employment over someone's inflated ego. She retrieved 2 water glasses and returned to table 9. "Here are your waters," she said, placing them down. "Thank you for your patience. What may I prepare for you?" Roman avoided eye contact, staring ahead as he spoke. "How remarkable! You can communicate and serve beverages. Should I applaud?" The woman across from him flinched visibly. Several diners paused mid-meal. Amani's expression remained unchanged. "Would you prefer sparkling or still water?" she inquired evenly. That's when he laughed, a loud, artificial sound that seemed forced. Finally, turning to meet her gaze, he said, "You know, if your people invested half the effort you spend complaining into actual work, you might achieve something." The restaurant didn't merely become quiet, it froze completely. A server stopped pouring wine midstream. Someone's spoon struck a bowl, and nobody moved to retrieve it. The issue wasn't solely his words, but the volume and certainty with which he delivered them. confident that nobody would challenge him. Someone would respond, though not with shouting, with a single powerful sentence. Amani didn't react immediately. She remained motionless, pen still in hand, order pad partially open, eyes fixed on Roman as if studying him, not with anger or fear, simply stillness. Her lips parted slightly as if to speak, but instead she inhaled through her nose, glanced at the table, then back up. The surrounding silence was overwhelming. The couple at table 14 ceased conversation. A gentleman at the bar slowly lowered his drink. Even the overhead piano music seemed subdued. "Did you understand me?" Roman asked, tilting his head like a child testing boundaries. "Or must I repeat it more slowly?" Amani's jaw tightened slightly. "I heard you clearly," she said. "I'm asking you once more, sir. Sparkling or still?" Roman scoffed. "Is this your standard customer service, or your interpretation of attitude?" The sarcasm spread across the floor like an unwelcome spill. Amani sensed her manager Thomas observing from the host station, though he didn't approach. Not yet. Roman's companion, perhaps his assistant, or someone barely known to him, finally spoke up, her voice barely audible. "Roman, perhaps we should—" "No," he snapped, without glancing her way. "I want to understand what training this establishment provides. Or maybe you missed that section, sweetheart. Too occupied tweeting about oppression?" There it was, the second public slap, equally loud and deliberate. Still, Amani didn't raise her voice. She slowly placed her notepad in her apron pocket and clasped her hands before her, standing straight as her grandmother had taught her when addressing someone who'd already formed their opinion. "Mr. Fletcher," she said steadily, "the kitchen is experiencing delays, but I'll submit your order. I'd suggest tonight's blackened sea bass. It's fresh." "Blackened?" Roman grinned, clearly amused by her word choice. "How appropriate." That marked the third offense, crossing a line so far back it was no longer visible. Amani stared at him, not challengingly, but as if she'd already accepted the situation. Her face remained still, her fingers unclenched. No fire existed, just this grounded calm, like a tree refusing to bend in strong wind. Then came the sentence, one single line delivered softly, clearly, and audibly enough for everyone nearby to hear. She looked directly at him and said, "You must be exhausted carrying that much hatred into every room." No shouting, no insults, no dramatics, just truth. It struck like a hand across marble. The silence that followed didn't feel like shock. It felt like recognition, as if someone had illuminated a room everyone had agreed to keep dark. Roman blinked once. For the first time, he had no clever response. His mouth opened slightly, but no words emerged. The woman across from him stared at Amani as if witnessing something both sacred and terrifying. The gentleman at table 14 slowly leaned back in his chair. From a corner booth, someone exhaled the word "damn." The tension didn't vanish, it transformed, like the moment when a storm passes overhead and the atmosphere remains heavy but quieter. However, Roman wasn't the type to sit with shame. He was the type to battle it. And that's when circumstances truly became complicated. Roman blinked again, more slowly, as if unable to process what had occurred. He opened his mouth as if to deliver another insult, but his words faltered. His confidence no longer appeared smooth, it was fracturing. It's peculiar when someone accustomed to power realizes they've lost control of the room. "You believe that was clever?" he finally muttered, though his voice lacked steadiness. It had diminished, almost as if he was trying to convince himself. "You think saying something poetic demonstrates intelligence?" Amani didn't respond. She didn't need to. The room already had. Thomas, the manager, finally stepped forward from the host station, tall, bald, with his shirt tucked so tightly it appeared pressed. Normally, he didn't intervene with customers unless someone threw a drink or overturned a plate, but this had gone far enough. "Is there an issue here, sir?" he asked, positioning himself behind Amani. Roman straightened in his seat, attempting to reclaim his posture and edge. "Yes, there is. I've been insulted publicly in your establishment." Thomas didn't even glance at Amani. His eyes remained locked on Roman's. "By whom?" Roman gestured toward Amani, almost laughing. "Who do you think?" Thomas blinked. "Because from my vantage point, all I witnessed was a young woman performing her job and a grown man attempting to humiliate her for it." The woman sitting with Roman, her name, it turned out, was Eliza, looked over at Thomas and nodded slightly. "She said nothing wrong." Roman turned on her. "So now you're supporting her?" "I'm not supporting anyone," Eliza said quietly. "I simply don't want to participate in whatever this has become." You could sense it then. That shift, the moment when everyone in the room silently agreed. He wasn't merely rude, he was out of line. Not because of one comment, but because he'd revealed something about himself that money couldn't conceal. "I'd like to request that you lower your voice," Thomas said, still calm but firmer now. "Or we can continue this conversation outside." Roman narrowed his eyes. "Are you ejecting me?" "No," Thomas replied. "I'm offering you the opportunity to remain with respect." And that's when Roman lost control completely. "Oh, spare me," he spat. "This entire performative charade. Everyone here pretending moral superiority just because I voiced what you were all thinking." Someone actually gasped. He looked around the restaurant as if daring someone to challenge him. "You all want to play saints tonight? Fine. Applaud the waitress. Perhaps even give her a standing ovation. That'll make you feel better driving back to your overpriced condominiums." He laughed again, but this time it was shaky, angry, desperate. "I'm not the problem. The problem is people like her thinking they've earned some kind of moral high ground just for showing up." Thomas stepped closer. "Sir Dash." But Amani interrupted. Her voice was quieter now, but it cut through the room like thread through fabric. "No one's applauding," she said. "No one's standing. People are simply watching you show them exactly who you are." Roman stared at her as if waiting for her to retract the statement. She didn't. He slowly rose from his chair, looking around at the faces near him, none of which offered support. His jaw moved as if grinding his teeth, but then he snatched his blazer from the chair back and looked down at Eliza. "Are you coming?" Eliza stood, grabbed her purse, and said simply, "I'll call a car." That was the final blow. He turned, stormed toward the exit, and as the doors closed behind him, you could almost feel the tension departing with him. It didn't disappear entirely, but it eased, like people were finally breathing again. Thomas looked at Amani. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "I'm fine." He said nothing else, just turned and walked away. But the story wasn't finished, not for Amani, and not for anyone who had been in that room, because what happened next would spread far beyond those walls. The door shut behind Roman like punctuation, a definitive end. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the gentleman from table 14 raised his glass slightly toward Amani. Not like a toast, more like acknowledgement. One by one, people began shifting again, refocusing on their meals, whispering across tablecloths, but something had changed. It wasn't just about Roman anymore. It was about how Amani had stood there, never raising her voice, never backing down, never descending to his level. People don't forget that kind of grace, not when it's witnessed firsthand. Amani exhaled. Not dramatically, just enough to clear her chest. Then she returned to her section and continued working. She didn't want recognition. She just wanted to complete her shift and go home. But the tables had turned, both literally and figuratively. A woman at table 12 stopped her as she passed by. "You handled that with such poise," she said. "My daughter's applying for server positions, and I hope she can carry herself like that." Amani smiled gently. "Thank you, ma'am. I hope she never has to." Then came the gratuities. Table 5 left her a $100 bill folded under the plate. Table 8 added a note on their receipt. "For your dignity." Then there was Eliza, the woman who'd been sitting across from Roman. She stayed, quietly moved to the bar, ordered wine, and waited until Amani had a moment. "Mind if I say something?" she asked. Amani shrugged lightly. "Sure." Eliza leaned in, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I should have said something. He behaves like that frequently, and usually people let it slide." Amani tilted her head slightly. "But you didn't. Not really, not tonight." "No," Eliza admitted, her gaze heavy. "But I let him bring me here. That's something I'll think about tonight." They didn't talk long, just a few words, but it was enough. Sometimes the shortest conversations leave the longest echoes. Thomas approached her near the end of the night. His face was neutral, professional. "I submitted an incident report," he said. "Company policy, but I noted that you remained respectful throughout." "Thanks," Amani said. He hesitated before speaking again. "He has connections. Might try to spin this. Just a heads up." Amani nodded. She wasn't surprised. Wealthy men didn't often walk away quietly. By the time the kitchen lights were dimmed and the last check had been paid, the weight of what had happened began to settle in. Not like a crash, but like a slow, sinking warmth in her chest. She didn't feel victorious. She felt still, like her feet were exactly where they were supposed to be. She pulled off her apron, grabbed her bag from the back, and slipped out the employee exit into the alley behind the restaurant. The air outside was cool and quiet, with just the sound of a distant siren and the occasional tire on pavement. She stood there for a moment, staring at the sky, dark and indifferent above her. And then her phone buzzed, a text from her friend Kayla. "Girl, was that you? I just saw on Twitter." Amani frowned, opened the link. It was a grainy video, clearly taken from someone in the restaurant. Someone had recorded Roman's tirade. And her response, that sentence. The caption read, "Waitress shuts down billionaire with one line." Dead silence. Hundreds of retweets, thousands of likes, comments pouring in. Amani blinked at the screen. She hadn't known anyone was recording. She hadn't wanted a spotlight. But now, there it was. And that was only the beginning, because the internet doesn't let moments like that disappear quietly. By the time Amani got home that night, her phone was barely keeping up. Notifications stacked on top of each other like dominoes falling nonstop. Her Instagram, which she barely used, had jumped from a modest 400 followers to nearly 9,000 in less than 3 hours. Twitter was worse or better, depending on how you looked at it. She tossed her keys onto the counter and sat on the edge of her couch, still in her work shoes, scrolling through the flood. This woman said one line and shut the entire room down. Queen behavior. Who is she? I want to Venmo her dinner money. This is how you carry yourself. Calm, unbothered, dignified. The clip had already made its way to TikTok, Reddit, and even Facebook. Someone had added subtitles. Another had paired it with a gospel choir background track. A few people tagged national news outlets. She should have felt flattered, maybe proud, but instead she just sat there, watching herself become a symbol before her eyes. Kayla called. "Girl," she said before Amani could even say hello. "You broke the internet, you know that, right?" I didn't ask to, Amani mumbled, half laughing. I know, but you didn't have to. That video, that moment, it's real. It's not a skit. It's not clout chasing. You didn't even know it was being filmed. That's what makes it hit. Amani didn't answer right away. Then she said, They're not the ones I work with, though. They're not the ones who will treat me differently tomorrow. Kayla paused. True, but maybe they'll be the reason someone finally listens. The next morning, the restaurant phone rang before the doors even opened. 3 news stations had called. One said they'd pay Amani to do a 10-minute segment. A few influencers reposted the clip with hashtags like Jean Grace Under Fire and Say It With Dignity. Thomas pulled Amani aside as soon as she clocked in. You okay with all this attention? He asked. Not really, she said, honest. He nodded. Let me know if you need a break. Will it make a difference? He hesitated. To everyone else? Probably not. But for you? It might. By lunchtime, someone had started a GoFundMe titled Support Amani's Future. In less than 6 hours, it had passed $30,000. And then, like it always does, the story reached the other side, Roman. By noon, his PR team had issued a formal apology. Mr. Fletcher acknowledges that his behavior was inappropriate and deeply regrets any offense caused. He is taking time to reflect and pursue inclusivity training. The comments didn't buy it, not for a second. One person replied, he regrets getting caught, not what he said. Another wrote, he's only sorry because she didn't yell. She made him look small by staying composed. Roman tried to fight back, posted a long thread about cancel culture and public shaming, but it didn't land because when the world hears the truth in silence, noise just sounds like noise. By dinner service, Barclay and Pine was fully booked, not because of a new menu item, not because of a special. People just wanted to sit in the room where it happened. They wanted to see the girl who didn't flinch. Some came to whisper thanks, others to stare. Amani served each one like she always did, with professionalism and restraint. But her eyes were sharper now. She knew what was real and what wasn't. Halfway through her shift, a woman in her 60s stopped her. White, well-dressed, kind eyes. I taught high school for 32 years, she said, and I always told my students, speak the truth, but don't let it steal your peace. I saw your video, and I just wanted to say thank you for showing how that's done. Amani nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. The woman smiled. Keep standing, even when your legs shake. That one stayed with her, but while the internet moved on to the next trending topic, something deeper was starting to shift, something no amount of views or likes could measure. 2 days later, the noise had started to die down online, but the impact hadn't. People were still talking, not just about the sentence Amani had said, but about what it meant, why it had landed so hard, why a billionaire could be silenced by someone who made $2.15 an hour before tips. But Amani wasn't reading comments anymore. She'd turned off the notifications. What mattered now wasn't how many people saw her, it was how they saw her. That Sunday, the general manager, Sonia Wilkes, called her into the office between brunch and dinner shifts. Sonia didn't waste time. We had a meeting with corporate, she said. They're aware of everything that happened. They're asking if you're open to doing press. Amani raised an eyebrow. What kind of press? Interviews, statement from the restaurant, maybe even a sponsorship. There's a PR company involved now. They're interested in branding you as a voice. Amani leaned back slightly in the chair. That's funny. No one wanted to hear my voice when customers yelled or threw menus. Now, suddenly it's worth money. Sonia didn't argue. She just nodded. Once. You're not wrong. Amani looked her in the eye. I didn't do this to go viral. I didn't even want to be part of this story. I know, Sonia said, but you are. There was a pause. Then Amani said, if they want a statement, here's one. Tell them I just want people to treat each other like human beings. Doesn't matter if you've got 10 billion in the bank or you're scrubbing dishes in the back. Respect isn't optional, it's basic. Sonia stared at her, quiet, then nodded. That's better than anything their PR team could come up with. Later that night, after closing, Amani walked out into the staff alley with a to-go container in one hand and her sweater in the other. That's when she saw him, Jamal, the dishwasher, sitting on a crate, smoking a cigarette, scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled. You famous now? Don't start, she said, smirking. I'm serious, he chuckled. You know how many people reposted that clip with #goals? I saw one lady say you were the reason she didn't cuss out her landlord yesterday. Amani laughed. It was short, real. I wasn't trying to be anyone's role model. He nodded. Exactly why you are. Then his smile faded, and his tone dropped. You know, when that man said what he said, I froze up. I was in the back and I heard it. I should have come out. Should have said something, but I just didn't. Amani looked at him for a long moment. You didn't owe me that, she said. You don't have to save me from something I can handle myself. He tapped ash from the cigarette. Yeah, but sometimes silence feels like agreement. I get that, she said. But you're talking now. That counts. They sat in that quiet for a bit. Not awkward, just easy. Then Jamal added, You know what's funny? I've been here 3 years. Never seen a customer get called out like that and actually leave. Not one. You did that without raising your voice. That's power. Amani didn't reply. She just nodded, once, slow. She was starting to understand something. Respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady. The kind of quiet that makes people listen because they weren't expecting to. But even with the attention cooling down, something unexpected was coming. Something Amani never asked for and didn't know if she wanted. The envelope came on a Wednesday. Plain white. No return address. It was slid under the staff room door during the lunch rush. Amani didn't even notice it until hours later when she went to grab her phone charger from her locker. At first, she thought it might have been a bill. Then she saw the name, Amani Daniels, typed neatly across the front. No title, no miss, just her name. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Cream-colored, heavy paper, the kind you only get from offices with oak desks and framed degrees. Dear Miss Daniels, my name is Gregory Elton, legal representative of Mr. Roman Fletcher. I've been asked to reach out on his behalf following the events of last Thursday evening at Barclay and Pine. Mr. Fletcher wishes to offer his formal apology, both privately and, if agreeable, publicly. He is prepared to meet in person or through a written statement, depending on your preference. This message is extended in good faith and with full respect for your dignity and autonomy in choosing how to proceed. There is no legal action being pursued, nor is any expected. Mr. Fletcher simply wishes to make amends. Amani stared at the paper for a long moment. Her hands didn't shake, her chest didn't tighten, but something in her gut turned like sour milk. She folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. That evening, she sat across from Kayla in their favorite corner booth at Miller's Grill in Akron, the kind of spot with plastic menus and lemon slices on every glass. No cameras, no whispers. You going to meet him? Kayla asked after reading the letter twice. Amani shook her head. I don't need to look that man in the eye again. Then what? Ignore it? I'm thinking about it. Kayla leaned forward. I mean, if he's really sorry, maybe it's a chance to... Kayla, Amani interrupted gently. This isn't for him. That whole thing wasn't about his redemption. It was about everyone else seeing what happens when someone with power steps too far and someone without it doesn't bow. Kayla looked down at her plate. I just don't want them to turn you into a story and then forget the person. Amani gave a small smile. Too late for that. A week passed. The GoFundMe crossed $70,000. Someone sent her flowers with a card that read, "For standing up without stepping down." A teacher in Kansas messaged her asking if she could show the video to her 9th grade class. A group of young workers from an airport lounge emailed to say, "You reminded us we don't have to take everything with a smile." But the most surprising message came in person. A man walked into Barclay and Pine on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, wearing a gray suit, no tie, and glasses that slid down his nose. He asked for Amani at the front. "I'm here to deliver a statement," he said, "per Mr. Fletcher's request." Amani stepped out from behind the counter. "I told your office I wasn't interested." "I understand," he replied. "He's not here to force anything, just offering something for you to keep if you want it." She paused. "What is it?" He pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it over. No strings. He's making a donation, quietly, to a training center in East Cleveland. Full tuition for 5 students in your name. Amani stared at him. "Why?" He said your sentence made him realize something, that silence isn't always weakness, it's strength, and that maybe if more people learned to listen without speaking, the world wouldn't feel so tense. She didn't respond right away. Finally, she said, "Tell him I said this isn't about redemption. It's about responsibility." The man nodded. "He knows. He's working on it." And in that moment, Amani understood. She hadn't just held her ground. She'd moved it, for herself, for others watching, and maybe even for the man who had tried to shrink her. Amani didn't post a long message. She didn't do a podcast interview or sign a deal or agree to a reality show someone randomly emailed her about. She didn't want to be a face for something she hadn't asked to be part of. But one afternoon, 2 weeks after it all happened, she stood in front of a group of teens at a youth center in East Cleveland, one of the very centers that Roman's quiet donation had funded. There were about 20 kids. Some wore hoodies, some chewed gum. A few scrolled their phones until she started speaking. "Most of the time," she said, "you don't get to control how people see you." Some of the kids looked up. "Some people will look at your clothes, your skin, your shoes, your job, before they ever look at your eyes. And you won't always get to fix that." She took a breath. "But you can control what you say and how you say it, and sometimes that's louder than shouting." They were quiet now. "I wasn't brave because I wanted to be," she continued. "I was just tired of being talked down to, tired of being expected to swallow it, and one day I just didn't." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "What happened after you said that line?" Amani smiled. "I got silence, the kind you can feel, the kind that makes a man with all the money in the world realize he can't buy back respect." A few heads nodded. Someone in the back muttered, "That's cold," like it was a compliment. Amani ended her talk the way she always wanted to, on her own terms. "If you remember anything from this," she said, "don't remember my job or the guy I was talking to or what I wore. Remember this: sometimes your calm is your strength, your quiet is your fight. Your dignity is your line, and no one gets to cross it without your permission." Afterward, she walked out into the parking lot alone. No applause, no cameras, just her. The sun was setting, slow and soft. She sat on the hood of her car and looked up at the sky, dark and indifferent above her, not waiting for anything, just breathing. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it because for the first time in a long time, She wasn't just reacting to the world around her. She was shaping her own, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it and who she refused to become in the process. If you ever find yourself standing in a room where someone tries to make you feel small, remember this: you don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Your stillness, your clarity, can be the loudest voice in the room. So when the moment comes, speak like it matters. Stand like you belong. And never forget, respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you carry.